Alicia Goggins, and today I'll be talking about policing in America, but specifically the bad reputations that law enforcement officials have. With the widespread use of camera phones, police actions are constantly being recorded and scrutinized. Almost every video we see of police interaction with citizens are negative. Okay? They normally contain police brutality and what we consider excessive force. Now, I'll be honest with you. Anytime the negative aspect of anything is shown, unfair opinions are normally formed. However, after viewing polls and speaking with law enforcement officials, it's a general feeling that law enforcement has a bad reputation. Okay. Recent events such as the Mike Brown shooting have led to what seems the loss of trust between citizens and police officers. However, according to Officer Joel Mondesir of the Savannah-Chatham Metro Police Department, it has only created a heightened sense of mistrust between citizens and officers. There's always been a certain level of mistrust or a certain disconnect between citizens and officers. Okay? And this varies greatly between races. African Americans feel that they are unfairly targeted by law enforcement in general. Before I jump into the videos, let me say that police actions are often misunderstood by the public. What we consider to be excessive force or police brutality are sometimes just standard procedure in certain situations. For example, police officers are not trained to impair suspects. If a police officer feels that his or her life is in danger, they are trained to kill. Now back to the subject. The majority of the videos that we see of police officers are negative. They often contain police brutality and excessive force, which does cause a negative opinion. However, when we do see videos of police officers doing good, we shrug it off because there's such a big cloud of police officers doing negative things. Also, when there are videos of police officers doing good things, it's not publicized and glorified or put on the news because it's not being newsworthy. That's simply because it normally falls within the normal scope of police duty. Okay? Now, police brutality has always existed. There's not a general feeling that it's on the rise. Most people, officers included, feel that police brutality is where it's always been. It happens. Okay? However, the use of cell phone cameras and social media is bringing it to light. Before, it was pretty hard to prove police brutality. And recently in the news, there are more and more stories of people being cleared and found innocent of charges that were brought on by police officers that have simply been proven to be false. For instance, in Florida, there was an instance where a woman was she was rear-ended by a police officer, and he arrested her for DUI. However, his dash camera showed what actually happened. Not only was the woman cleared, but the police officer was charged. Okay. Another reason that police brutality or police actions often aren't publicized is that police officers and police departments, they look out for themselves. A lot of times they're a cover-up after misconduct has been found, and in some cases a lot of complaints just aren't investigated. Okay? Now, back to my point earlier when I said Americans of different races feel that police actions affect them differently. Okay? 74% of Caucasians said that police would not use excessive force on them. However, 34% of African Americans said that they were confident that police officers would not use excessive force on them. In perspective, it counterbalances each other. The majority of whites feel safer when it comes to police versus the majority of blacks. Now, 83% of all people surveyed said that they do not believe that their local law enforcement agency would typically avoid using excessive force and treat blacks and whites equally. They also said that police officers generally do a poor job of treating races equally. Now, a lot of people I think, well, that's just the opinion of the public. Well, after interviewing Officer Joel Mondesir and Officer Walter Medford, they've admitted these things to be true. Generally, blacks and whites are treated differently by law enforcement officials. Now, this could be this fact could be changed by a lot of different ways. It may be the fact that whites interact differently with police, or it could be the fact that police just have a certain level of, police officers are used to dealing with African Americans in a certain context. I'm not saying this is fair, because you can't treat everyone the same based on past experiences, but this is simply how it is. Okay? After speaking with law enforcement officers and reading recent polls on how the public feels about law enforcement, it is obvious that law enforcement has a poor reputation. Citizens are concerned about police treatment and how it varies between races. The explosion of social media and cell phone camera use has brought light to the dark side of law enforcement. Even some police officers feel that it would be almost impossible to restore the public's faith in them, but they are willing to try, even though it'll be a long journey.